Growing up, my mom told me that I could be anything I want to be, but I don't think I could be a surrogate. There's definitely specific requirements that it takes to meet to become a surrogate. In this video, we're going to talk about what those are. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Corlendos Scott, and I'm an assisted reproduction attorney in Los Angeles, and I built my practice around helping people grow their family through assisted reproduction. That's surrogacy, egg donation, sperm donation, and today we're going to talk about exactly what does it take to be a gestational carrier, or surrogate as they're called. Well, we're going to look at the physical requirements, we're going to look at the psychological requirements, and we're also going to look at what I call the sacrificial requirements. Let's jump right in. So what are the main physical requirements to be a surrogate? Thankfully enough, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, ASRM, gives us some general guidelines to follow in this regard. The typical age of a successful surrogate candidate is anywhere between 21 to 40, maybe sometimes a little bit older, depending on health and situation. Also, you have to make sure that your candidate has had a previous successful pregnancy and delivery. Yeah, to be a gestational carrier, you have to at least be able to show that you can carry. So that makes sense that you want to make sure you don't leave it to fate. You want to see that she's done this before and she's done it successfully without problems or complications. Now, somebody might ask, how many pregnancies are too many pregnancies? Can there be too many pregnancies? Well, we all know that pregnancy and childbirth definitely puts a lot of strain on a person's body and that a woman goes through a lot throughout the process. One of the things to keep in mind is just a general standard is you want to make sure you're looking at a candidate with maybe a maximum of 5 vaginal births and 3 cesarean births. Another one of the physical requirements is a healthy BMI, body mass index. And it's not that we're body shaming people or that people that weigh a certain amount shouldn't be doing it. It's because of the risks. Remember, we don't want to put people at unnecessary risks. And unfortunately, BMI factors into the possibility for things like gestational diabetes and other things that could put the potential candidate at risk. So make sure you talk to the doctor about what a healthy BMI should be for you to undergo the surrogacy process. Another one of the things that we look at when we're talking about physical requirements is, oddly enough, no tattoos or body piercings in the recent past. I'd say up to a year. And the reason for that, it may seem like a weird request, but it is possible to transfer diseases or infections through needles. And while most tattoo parlors and piercing parlors are probably up to spec, there's a possibility that some are not. And so you just wouldn't want to take the risk of having a potential infection that could jeopardize a pregnancy. Okay, so those are some of the physical requirements, but there's also psychological requirements. Psychological requirements? Absolutely. Let's look at them. One of the things that a wise intended parent is looking for in a surrogate is a stable home life. Now, thankfully for intended parents domestically, it doesn't quite matter whether the surrogate is married or unmarried, but any smart intended parent is going to want to make sure that their surrogate is in a stable position in her home. Maybe they want to make sure that she has the support of a spouse or a partner, or that she has a good family unit around her. But in no event would they want someone whose life is surrounded by drama or anything like that, because it adds to the potential for complications, both psychologically and sometimes physically if there's an abusive situation or something of that nature. So you want to make sure that you have a problem-free home environment with support. One of the other requirements is financial stability. Yes, financial stability, but Corlendos, surrogates get compensated, so what do the finances matter? Well, yes, outside of altruistic surrogacy arrangements, compensated surrogacy does exist, and most surrogates do get compensated for what they do for the intended parents. But that compensation shouldn't be their sole form of income. Even if they are a stay-at-home mother, they can't be depending solely on the compensation from the surrogacy arrangement to make their lives possible. That's one of the things that people who are against surrogacy argue about. They think you're taking advantage of these women who would otherwise not be able to live but for your monthly surrogacy allowance. Well, we want to avoid all questions around that. So if you want to be a surrogate, you can't be depending on any kind of government assistance or for the surrogacy compensation to be your main compensation. So if you want to be the best candidate for surrogacy, you shouldn't be dependent on government assistance solely, and you shouldn't also be dependent on the surrogacy compensation as your sole form of livelihood. Another psychological consideration that is kind of medical in nature also is living a healthy lifestyle. And when I say healthy lifestyle, yes, I do mean physically. You eat right, you rest well, you exercise, you're in shape, but also mentally healthy. You shouldn't be trying to undertake being a surrogate if you're dealing with issues like depression or anxiety. These are things that can complicate life in general, let alone a pregnancy, even more so a surrogacy pregnancy under strict terms from another person. And that gets me to the last main point around the psychological preparedness, which is just mental readiness. Your emotions are in a place, your mentality is in a place where you understand what the process entails. You understand that you're carrying someone else's baby, and you understand that at the end of the day, you're doing a service out of the kindness of your heart, even though you may be getting compensated, but you're doing it for another person or couple, and you're willing to do it on the terms that you guys have both agreed on. When you're at that point and you're mentally ready, I think you really have the psychological component down. But it's so important that you keep this in mind as you go through the psychological evaluation, because you'll have a qualified mental health professional walking you through the process. Before I get to my last point, if you're watching this video and you're curious about the other steps of the surrogacy process, especially how to choose the right surrogacy attorney, make sure you click the button below and subscribe to our channel, and go back and watch the video on how to choose the right surrogacy attorney. Because if you're doing the process, you'll definitely need a surrogacy attorney on your side. So make sure you know how to choose the right one. Now let's look at that third factor. The third element of requirements to be a surrogate is what I call the sacrificial requirement. Now, being a surrogate requires you to sacrifice some things that you would otherwise be able to do. I remember a client who was a surrogate that once said to me, "Hey, Corlandos, I am a huge fan of theme parks and amusement parks, and one of my favorite things to do is ride roller coasters." And I was like, "Me too, I love them. I'm front seat, hands up, yeah, screaming." But I said, being a surrogate, you probably won't be able to do that. Now, of course, she was disappointed because her summers included hitting up theme parks and having the time of her life. And she's absolutely allowed to do that whenever she wants. But if she's going to choose to be a surrogate, there's some things she has to be willing to give up or sacrifice. So it's something to keep in mind that if you want to do this process, there will be things that you are voluntarily giving up for a period of time so that you can go through the process and help someone achieve their dream of growing their family. The reality is this: you understand that you're carrying the baby, but the real parents are the people on the other side of that process or that contract, what we call the intended parents. So in order to do the process, you have to be willing to work with them on their terms that you, of course, get a say in. But once you guys decide on those terms, and those terms will definitely involve you giving up some things that you would normally have the right to do. But once you agree on that, that's really the point where there's no turning back, and you've agreed to sacrifice those things for the greater good of helping someone grow their family. And for me, there isn't a more beautiful thing than seeing someone leave the hospital with a beautiful baby that they otherwise wouldn't be able to have without the help of a surrogate or gestational carrier. So if you're watching and you want to learn more about the inner workings of the surrogacy process, I've created a roadmap to show you just that. You can click the link below and download my surrogacy roadmap, where I walk you through the entire surrogacy process from the beginning to the end, and you know exactly what you need to do first, second, third, and so on. So click the link below and I'll get that surrogacy roadmap to you, and you can go from dream to delivery.